And now it is my honor to invite the featured speaker today, and that speaker is Anne. Anne has been studying metaphysics for most of her adult life. She became a lifelong meditator after being introduced to TM, or Transcendental Meditation, in the mid-70s. She was drawn to work for the TM movement because of the positive results she experienced and because the mission of the organization is world peace through meditation. Anne has been a student of the Science of Mind since the mid-1980s, when she was first introduced to Science of Mind magazine and found Paoli CSL in 1992. Anne took practitioner training and became a practitioner in 2004. Professionally, Anne spent 35 years in the field of maternal/newborn health care as a registered nurse, midwife, nurse practitioner, and high-risk pregnancy case manager. Anne adheres to the vision of bringing peace to the world through spiritual awakening and is grateful to be practicing for the Science of Mind. I bring to you Anne Cassidy Zoll.
Thank you, Joe, and good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to see you all here. It helps to see all the smiling faces. So, as you know, the 2018 theme for the Centers for Spiritual Living is 100 Years of Science of Mind. We are now in a new month, and November's theme is Freedom from Fear and Error Thinking. I chose Time to Blossom as my topic today, inspired by the quote, "And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom." I love this quote. It is from Anaïs Nin, a French-American writer in the early to mid-20th century. It speaks to me of overcoming fear, of stepping out, being willing to change. To bloom means to mature into achievement of one's potential, to become expressed. The day arrives when we are no longer being pushed by pain, but pulled by the vision of our blossoming. I think we all desire to be our authentic selves. The idea of free to be me has been in the lexicon since the 1970s. We want to be loved and accepted as we are. As with most of life, this is an inside job. Self-acceptance is providing oneself with validation and support. After years in this teaching and doing practitioner work, I've come to understand that two of the biggest challenges in our spiritual development are fear and the belief in, quote, not good enough. The common belief of unworthiness stems from cultural or religious ideas of unworthiness or original sin. Basically, that we are born not good enough and need to be saved. Well, in reality, we are born of good. We are born in the image and likeness of God, spirit, universe, light, life, whatever word you prefer. It is good. We are born good. The Irish poet, philosopher, and mystic John O'Donohue said, "To be born is to be chosen." The universe chooses us. We belong to the universe. Fear comes from a belief in separation from the good that I am. It comes from an error belief that I'm alone in the universe without support, that there is a they out there out to get me. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of lack, loss, fear of blank. And we can all fill in the blanks. So what is fear? You may be familiar with the acronym of FEAR, stands for false evidence appearing real. That's putting a pretty positive spin on it. And then there's another one. Forgetting everything's all right. That's good. And then AA is kind of ironic in their interpretation. Future event already ruined. But so many of us do that, don't we? We think, oh, this can happen, that can happen. So yeah, we need to laugh at it. Ernest Holmes says that both fear and faith are mental attitudes. He says we unfortunately have great faith in fear, such as faith in the fear of job loss, material possessions, faith in the fear of loss of health. He goes on to say, and this is from the book, faith must overcome fear, and strong statements of faith should be used to erase the thoughts of doubt and worry that assail us. We should read, study, think, and meditate upon those statements, which tend to calm, to give poise and confidence, and erase all thought of fear and tension. And that in itself is a treatment. He was teaching us to treat right there. The subjective, and back to him, the subjective law can only operate upon that which it is given. So we must be very careful of our patterns of thought. We are in a sea of untroubled waters of life from which we may freely drink. We must do the drinking. And Ernest put that in italics. We must do the drinking. No one else can do this for us. So, since we didn't have a demonstration today, I'll be the demonstration, okay? So I am here stepping out of my comfort zone. As you probably are aware, that the number one fear of Americans is public speaking. And I looked that up, and it's still true. It's been true for years and years, decades. So I share in that fear. So being up here speaking is my own demonstration of letting go of that fear. I remember the first time I did a treatment from the podium back when I was a practitioner intern, and I was literally shaking like a leaf. So over the years, it has become easier and easier to do public treatments. And look, now I'm public speaking. And, thank you. And I'm not shaking. See? But just like the bud, it takes time. And I have Anna East's quote on my refrigerator encouraging me for years. And now I'm here. So to our spiritual practices already outlined by Ernest, our meditation, our treatment, our contemplation, I'd like to add another tool to our toolbox, and that is the practice of self-compassion. This practice can assist us in overcoming the error in our thinking that we are not good enough. A sense of unworthiness leads to self-judgment and self-criticism. I was first introduced to the practice of self-compassion in the Women's Wisdom Circle. We spent a year studying, discussing, and practicing self-compassion. Our guide was the book, Self-Compassion, The Proven Power of Being Kind to Yourself, by Dr. Kristen Neff, a research psychologist who has made self-compassion her life's work. She researches the topic, she writes about it, she does workshops, and she gives TED Talks. And just a commercial here. The Women's Wisdom Circle was a care group, but it has disbanded. So I'd like to put out to all you goddesses here, if anyone's feeling the call to start another women's group, please do so. Follow your urges. Also, I talked to Diane about getting the book, but our distributor doesn't carry it. But you can pretty much get it at any bookstore, should you want to. Okay, end of commercial. So many of us judge ourselves. Our self-critical natures can stunt our growth as well as making us very unhappy. It leads to criticism and judgment of others as well. A critical inner voice, or sometimes a whole committee, that can consist of voices from the past, parents, bosses, teachers, etc., keeps us closed in the bud. Would we ever say to a dear friend what we say to ourselves? Self-compassion allows us to give up judgment of ourselves as well as others. If we find ourselves being critical of others or complaining a lot, look inside. If you truly love and value yourself and treat yourself with compassion, you find it extends outward to family, friends, co-workers, cashiers in the stores, unconscious drivers on the highway. Self-compassion is linked to less anxiety, depression, and stress. It is also linked to greater happiness and greater coping skills. Sometimes we have cultural blocks to self-compassion. There's a belief that it will decrease our motivation, if we're good to ourselves or nice to ourselves. But in actuality, the research shows that it's the opposite, that motivation decreases with harsh self-criticism. And we become more afraid of failure, develop performance anxiety, lose confidence, and give up. Research also found that self-compassionate people were significantly more likely to forgive others for their transgressions than those who lacked self-compassion. Self-compassion enhances our sense of worthiness. Self-criticism is shaming and blaming when things go wrong. The scientific studies have shown that the fight or flight response in the brain is triggered not only by physical attacks, but by emotional attacks as well. And those emotional attacks can come from others or from ourselves. There is that same physiologic response, which is the amygdala, the reptilian brain, sends signals that increase the cortisol levels, blood pressure, adrenaline. Over time, increased cortisol levels adversely affect our mental as well as physical health. That's the nurse in me talking. The amygdala. So when we practice self-compassion, we meet feelings of unworthiness with a quality of tenderness and kindness. We are worthy of compassion because of common humanity and common divinity. We are connected. We are not alone. When our care group studied self-compassion, we learned it has 3 core components. 1, instead of self-criticism, self-kindness. 2, instead of self-isolation, common humanity. And 3, instead of self-absorption or getting stuck, we have mindfulness. So how do we practice self-compassion? What does it look like? So say if something goes wrong, let's use an example of a job interview that doesn't go well. So, typically we could leave the interview and just start beating ourselves up, and why did I say that? And, oh, that was so stupid, and just going down all those negative responses to the experience. So when you're practicing self-compassion, you stop that and you begin to treat yourself with kindness. You become mindful of those difficult feelings. And you ask, what do I need in this moment? What do you need in this moment? You need comfort. You are your own best friend, so you comfort yourself. You talk to yourself in warm tones, encouraging, using things like, it wasn't so bad. Most of the interview went well. You're intelligent and talented. You will get your right and perfect job. Just anything that makes you start to feel better. The idea is we have to just stop beating ourselves up in these moments of stress. So that idea of giving comfort to ourselves, that mindfulness thing, you stop. You become aware of your feelings, and then you comfort. And we do have the experience for doing it for others. If your friend called and said, oh, I had this terrible interview, what would you do? You'd comfort them. So get in the practice of doing it for yourself. Can you say, may I be kind to myself and mean it? Buddha said, you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. There are many loving-kindness meditations. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I live with ease. Speak them to yourself. Or whenever you have a feeling of insecurity or start criticizing yourself, silently say, I love and accept myself exactly as I am. Interestingly, it was found that men, more often than women, see self-compassion as a weakness. Yet the opposite turns out to be true. In a recent study, Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans with high self-compassion were much less likely to suffer PTSD symptoms, regardless of the severity of their combat experience. Dr. Chris Germer, a colleague of Kristen Neff, who also researches and teaches self-compassion, works to help men gain the proven benefits of self-compassion, which are higher motivation, drive, courage, and resilience. I'd also like to add here to women, self-kindness also means that we protect and empower ourselves, individually and collectively. We stand up and say, no, you cannot harm me in this way. But that's a whole other talk. But it is self-kindness. When we stand up for ourselves, we are taking care of ourselves. And for a really easy, self-compassionate response to a mistake, I particularly like Dr. Maxine's example of the clowns in the circus. You know, they do stupid stuff, they fall down, they blah, blah, whatever, and then they stand up and go, ta-da! And everyone applauds, and they bow. So, so try it. It can really take the tension out of a tense situation. George Eliot said, "It is never too late to be what you might have been. We have all seen a bud that dies before it blooms." Did you know that inside the bud, a tiny but complete flower is formed? It is the natural cycle of life for the bud to open and bloom. It is a gradual process, a synchronized opening. Every flower has its inner time clock. Some plants flower within days, while it takes others months or even years. As I said previously, Anna E's quote has been on my refrigerator for years. If we feel stuck, or if the status quo in our lives has become painful, it is because we know we have more to experience, more to enjoy, more to give. We let go of the fear of failure, of unworthiness, and just as the flower turns toward the sun, we turn toward our inner light, having faith in life itself, and we blossom into full bloom. By learning to love and accept ourselves and replacing fear with faith, we set ourselves free. Free to be me, free to be you, free to be we. And so it is. Thank you. Oh, I have one more thing. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Ta-da! Thank you so much. That was really nice.